Welcome to the Edition Wars podcast, where we discuss RPG ideas, compare rules, establish some agreed upon definitions of what is and what isn't D&D, and then we fight about what we think about those things, and generally geek out over our favorite game and games, and even our not-so-favorite games. Anyway, I am Sam Dillon.
And I'm Brenda Stoddard, and this episode we are discussing experience points in 3rd edition through 5th edition.
Ah, yes.
So, 3rd edition is yet another sea change, I would say. But it is ultimately much more like 2nd edition. Really, the big sea change is the whole idea of challenge rating and encounter balancing. That's just such a new and different idea in 3rd. There's much more of an idea of how many encounters you'll face in a day, creating your rate of advancement in itself.
Right. Which is extremely different. I mean, that actually is maybe one of the most significant differences, because that's not something that was considered before. I mean, think about what we just said an hour ago about 0 edition, right? About the basic, the white box at the very early stages. They're talking about going into a dungeon and awarding experience, a portion of experience based on your level comparison compared to the dungeon level, right? If you're 2nd level and you're on the 2nd level dungeon and you're fighting a 2 hit die creature, then you're going to get full experience for that. But if you're 5th level and you're on the 2nd level, you're not going to get full experience for that. And that was how they made challenge rating sort of match. And that had no thought towards how many possible encounters or situations you'll be in an adventuring day or per level before you level up again. Also, by the way, let me point out something that I didn't say before. Remember that, so we're talking about being on the 2nd level of a dungeon and being a 5th level character and not getting all of the XP. But remember that not everybody in that party is the same level. So you might be on the 4th level of a dungeon and your 2 fighters might actually be 4th level, the mage might be 2nd level, and the thief might be 6th level. So they're getting a different portion based on what's happening. And none of that at all allows for a direct pathway to be traced from what the characters are doing in the game to in any way, shape, or form how many possible or expected encounters per level that they live. Whereas 3rd edition, all of a sudden, here it is. Let's just make it very obvious and simple.
Yep, it is very much like at the beating heart of play. No mistake. And so it's a very involved table lookup, but it's just a table lookup. Let's not get it twisted. You have your character level and the challenge rating of the creature, and you cross-reference those, and that gives you the total, and you just sort of work your way through everything that they defeated in the course of the day in exactly that way. And here we get things that are that don't have an XP total listed, because if you beat that, something weird happened, and maybe that needs a custom award. Like, you had no business fighting that, much less beating it, on one end, and on the other end, your that thing was no threat to you. Why did you stab it? Like, you are so completely above that thing that that isn't a fight. That's just a slaughter. No, thank you. You don't get XP for that. And so that's a really important mechanic here. But it's only one of the 2 experience point systems of the edition, because there's also a whole section on story awards and letting the whole experience point dynamic of the game just be story driven, which, I mean, when you get down to it, and sort of when you get down to what defining missions can entail, is, to me, uh, uh, not even a half step away from um, it's the game where all the points are made up. Like, the DM just says a number at the end of the session, and that's what you get. And the DM has probably figured out what's going to feel good for the amount of threat you faced, and so they said that number. Pro tip: that's what I've been doing since third edition. I do not have time in my giving a good goddamn to calculate all the creatures and add them up and then divide them by all the players. No, I'm not going to do that. So I come up with a number that sounds pretty fun, and I've got a pretty good sense of how, uh, big numbers sound fun, but I don't want to make them too big or keep inflating them. So I know how to be nice and steady with it, and I just say that number, whatever feels right in my soul, and I trust that. Again, I'm very good at gaming, uh, but here I'm being a little less ironic.
In second edition, I was asking about, it just, I just, for the life of me, I couldn't remember whether it was actually written if you got, XP for gold. Because when I played second edition, we always just played with it, but I couldn't remember if that was just our house rule or if it, whatever. It turns out, as you mentioned, it was an optional rule. But the thing is, changing that. So, in other words, for me, that kind of parameter on how to earn experience and the effect it has on the game was a constant for me when I played D&D from the beginning up through second edition to the end of second edition. And that's a very sort of specific type of gameplay because of what I said about strategy and rewarding players for certain things and all that. And second edition did a great deal to try to pull in the story items and all that kind of stuff and sort of reduce the impact of the loot for XP and all that. But third edition completely removes it and goes to a situation where now you're dealing with a certain set expected number of encounters until you level and all this sort of thing. And that is a fundamental shift in the expected gameplay. Not from the mechanical perspective. I mean, it's a shift in the mechanics too, but it actually fundamentally shifts the goal posts of the game. And that shift happened in second edition for, I suppose, many people as well, but not for me because we were still really playing first edition and we just kind of used second edition stuff here and there, right? And then we said, oh, we're playing second edition, but it was really still basically just first edition. So for me, like for this huge span of time playing the game, it had one type of set of goals. And then in third edition, it was a complete change. It was a change in focus, change in goals, change in what the expected desired goal is for the game session in a way. And I think it's hard to understate the effect that has on a player. New players coming in and just learning about this awesome game, and older players who have been playing the game with the sort of other expectations for a very long time. And I think that you can probably, if you look at sort of the OSR nowadays, the old school Renaissance, the old school Revolution, whichever version of the acronym you wanted to use, when you look at that movement, there's two things that stick out. And the first one is they have a lot of really do-it-yourself focused type of things that they do. It's all about kludging your own house rules to things, making the game work for the best for your group, creating new and interesting things, creating new items, creating new adventures, creating new everything. It's do it yourself. You have a couple of rule books and that's it. Everything else is you're coming from your brain and your group, and you do things through play. And then the second kind of thing that that really is part of that movement, if you will, it's not really a movement, but uh, is XP for gold is in a lot of cases still a focus of the game because it does support that strategic but not necessarily tactical play, because the strategy of trying to gain the loot is different from the strategy of overcoming this encounter, which really means killing this beast. It's hard to underestimate that shift. It's hard to underestimate the difference that that makes. And I don't mean that as a value judgment. I'm just saying it's an entirely different game. It's not the same game. So there was a lot
Yep.
of, when fourth edition came out, oh, this isn't D&D, and though there's all these things, guess what? Third edition wasn't D&D either, because that for some people, right? I'm not actually espousing that, but that was such a shift. That was such a huge shift. You cannot overestimate the impact that shift had on how the game played, for good or ill. Whether you think it's a good or bad thing is a very personal, individual idea, right? I'm not putting an overall value judgment on it. It's just that's the truth. It was such a huge shift. Okay, now I'm done off my soapbox.
That's super fair. I think everything you said is true. It's a huge culture change, and I have certainly seen people uh, talk about, and I assume they carried through with this. I don't actually know, but talk about applying
Hmm.
gold for XP to third
Right.
and later, and enjoying the effects that has. Um, but what I wanted to say about third edition is that there are two major ways to lose experience
Hmm.
points. Now, there are ways to lose experience points in earlier editions. The the maybe really famous one
Right.
is uh, making unwise decisions on a deck of many things. This isn't going to come up much, but when it happens, that is 50 large going out the door. Uh, that you did not care to lose. Um, but in third edition, you lose a level when you are raised from the dead
Hmm.
um, through anything other than, I think, true resurrection. Um, and this is designed to be the sting in death. Your character can't permanently die unless you are murdered all the way back down to first level, and um, then killed
Hmm.
so many times you have no con left. I mean, that is, I guess someone decided to grief you and to pay all the diamonds necessary to do that. That's
Right.
not mostly happening, but permanent death is not a significant threat in the game. Like death is about you're out for a while. The party's gonna get you back, whatever, and that's fine. Um, but the way the XP tables work, it is intended that you'll be able to catch up adventure over adventure because you were one level
Hmm.
lower, and so you were earning XP, earning more XP per encounter. That's a significant thing um, from that table I was just describing. Then there's the other thing, which is that enchanting magic items cost experience points. You you gather up gold and you take a bunch of time in the course of the game and you've bought the right feat and you spend those experience points. Now, you've got to spend really a lot of experience. You got to make really a lot of magic items or make it
Right.
really high, really high value magic items to see it make a difference in when you level up uh, by more than maybe one session. Maybe that's even then pretty unlikely. But it does mean that any idea of all the players being the same XP total is dead in the water. Um, is just not a thing. The game explicitly doesn't expect it, and in fact tries to solve for the fact that it won't happen by granting more experience to the lower level members of the party. But the XP cost of enchanting magic items isn't drawn evenly from all the players, right? The fighter doesn't have a way to expend that experience unless there's some mechanic introduced so that it's drawn off of the fighter's spirit or whatever when the wizard makes him a, a magic silver hammer or whatever. Like when I first read it, I felt like the intended dynamic was okay, so the fighters and rogues are going to do the most dying because they're in the front, and so they're losing XP that way, while the casters are going to mostly live and just be slowly bleeding XP to do all the enchanting. Well, that's pretty debatable whether that actually works out. But it's neither here nor there. Suffice it to say that I do not now have what I would call a warm fuzzy place in my heart for XP for enchanting, except insofar as I was often playing playing third edition games where the DM also gave XP bonuses for players writing journal entries about sessions as a way to record what was going on. So if I was getting a little more tolerance for making magic items by doing a little extra work away from the game, well, that's fine. I can live with that. Now, there's also energy drain and all kinds of other horrible things that monsters can do to you that can cost levels temporarily or not temporarily, which more mechanics I don't miss. I'm really not sorry to see levels in fourth and fifth be a one-way progression. I am not missing that at all.
Right.
Let's see. So circling back, you mentioned in OD&D that there's no practical upper limit on advancement. You can just keep going. Like what you get per level slows down, but you can just keep going. So I do want to mention that at least for human characters, that's also true for most classes in first edition. There are a couple of classes that, for not a lot of apparent reason, have a
Right.
level cap. I think the assassin is level cap at 14 or so, and the druid has a level cap at 14 or 15 maybe, until Unearthed Arcana comes out and blows the door off the druid and makes everyone sort of laugh and point at the assassin, I guess. But there was definitely a dynamic of, well, 20th level is maybe the highest level we're going to talk about very much, but the game definitely could continue past that. And then in second edition, they got a little more explicit with that exploration. Well, okay, let me say I know that Frank Menster got much more explicit with post 20th level play in Beckby and in Rule Cyclopedia, right? Much more, and I think that's really cool. It's not for every campaign, but it's a neat thing to have out there, even if the vast majority of games never see it.
Yeah, you could go up to 36th level, and you can become immortal.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, there's that system is, I don't want to say unique because I know there are some other settings and whatnot that have similar things, but But going up to that high a level in D&D is not something that is common. And so, one of the things is this sort of the same thing happens in 4th edition, right? Where epic level play was the much, by far the least common.
Oh yeah.
It's much less common for a party to get up. There were several, don't get me wrong, but that was much less common. And same thing happened in BECME, that not very many people went up that high.
Right.
It's just the truth of the matter.
For sure. And so in 2nd edition, you've got your DM's option high level campaigns book that lays out one set of progressions for high level play, and then you've got your Forgotten Realms Arcane Age supplements that are 21st and higher level play. I know it charts at least up to 40th level because Arcane Age is 100% about some 40th level wizards running around. That's the concept.
Right.
And then you've got Dragon Kings supplement for Dark Sun that is 21st through 30th, that includes your Dragon transformation and your Evangeon transformation.
Right.
And so that brings me back to 3rd edition with the Epic Level Handbook. And again, this is not a set of rules any of my campaigns ever reached, but it definitely was trying to explore what very high level play could look like with just vast numbers of XP you've had to earn. You've been playing for ages and ages and ages, presumably, if you played from 1st level. But we want to talk about changing away from the core experience of D&D into just some totally different thing. Well, this is one way it does it. That's for sure.
Right.
Like everything about the dynamic and aesthetic of epic level play is going to be super, super different.
3rd is such a breaking point. And while 2 is, 2nd edition is very close, and as we talked about, it's very easy to see the through lines of the things that are threaded through the several editions at a time. But 3rd is such a break from the previous. I would consider sort of 0 edition through 2nd edition to be kind of the sort of, they're the grandfathers, right?
Yep.
And 3rd is really the beginning of the modern D&D age,
Sure.
I think. Yep. Okay, so I think we're ready to take on 4th edition.
I think so, and things take a shift in a direction that really surprised me when 4th edition first came out.
Really?
And
okay.
Maybe it shouldn't have, but I was reading these rules and sort of called back to mind that feeling of surprise that I had. So in 3rd ed, there was the whole sort of approach to level banding where your level against the CR that you faced adjusted the amount of experience that you got. And we just talked about that. So 4th edition reverts that to a creature has a fixed XP reward, I believe.
Yes, they do.
Right. Yeah. So its XP reward is based on its level, and its role is minions grant less, and boy howdy do solos ever grant more.
That sounds like a different episode, to be honest.
It's yeah. I mean, yeah, we should absolutely talk about just the combat role thing in 4th. That is a whole episode because it's amazing. Anyway, so right. There's the whole question of is this thing always worth 250 XP, or is it only worth that when you are at a given level, and then it's worth less as you out-level it? And fourth ed says, well, no, it's always worth that. So in principle, though not in practice, thank goodness, you can go after 40 XP minions for 1,000,000 XP each and be 30th level. But that's one of those cases where the designers just don't bother stopping you from ruining your own fun, and that's fine, because that would not be fun. That's not a good way to reach to get a whole party to 30th level. No. But that's another thing. Advancing to 30th level is the standard here. That's the expected span of a campaign, rather than 1 to 20, as we arguably saw in second and definitely saw in third, despite the existence of 21st level and higher in both of those games. In fourth, 21st through 30th level is its own separate tier. That, I mean, if I say you're expected to play it, we all understand that that's a very loose use of the word expected, right?
Right. Maybe a better way to say it would be it's expected that some groups will find that level set very enticing.
Sure.
And so it's expected, maybe the way to say it is, it's expected that because the rules specifically allow players and PCs to gain up to 30 levels, that it's expected that the game should work at those higher levels. Now, whether it does or not is another question, I think. That's also another episode.
And so right. How the game's balance sorts out those levels is. But when you get to 1,000,000 experience points, you are 30th level and done advancing. And I think it's rather nice that they sorted the numbers out to make that work. That feels sort of like a nice round number. And it calls to mind the vast numbers of experience that you might need to gain just one level in the late game of first and second. Needing 500,000, 1,000,000 experience points to gain a level. Yeah, that's nothing. Whatever. Yeah.
Right.
That's just totally part of the game. And so the numbers are contracted here, but more significantly, the pace of advancement is substantially ramped up. I think part of the expectation is that you're earning your 30 levels in something similar to the time it would take to earn 20 levels in third ed. I don't have text to back that up, or math, but that's my belief.
Well, I mean, it's the dynamics in fourth edition are so very different from any other edition of the game, and one of the things that happens is it's specifically designed. This is kind of off topic, but it's specifically designed to create first level characters that are highly competent and highly capable, and that means they're capable of surviving very difficult, relatively speaking, encounters, even at very low levels. And that means that because they are so capable and so efficient and effective and have high hit points and can deal a lot of damage, when you're talking about just combat, they can just sweep through levels and their advancement ends up being very quick. Whereas even in third edition, even though third edition I would consider it a modern iteration of the game, first level characters are still relatively squishy in third edition. Not as squishy as, say, a first edition magic user, but still very squishy. So given that, that's sort of the progression, the way it's going. The fast advancement, the rapid advancement of characters in 4th edition makes sense given, I think, the design goals of the lower level characters. They're so powerful, they're so capable, and of course they're going to advance very rapidly because they are so capable. In 1st edition, a magic user might have 1 hit point. There's the old joke of, a magic user in 1st edition could get killed by a house cat, because a house cat can do, whatever, 1d4, 1d6 damage, and
Man,
a
that's still
magic
true
user
in
only
3rd.
has. Yeah, right. So, but I just mean, it's sort of, that's just sort of how it goes, and I think that was a complaint that 4th edition tried to address, and the way that they addressed it, in part, once again, this is slightly off topic, but the way that they addressed it was by making extremely capable characters. Well, when you make extremely capable characters, even at low levels, they tend to advance very rapidly. So that was my. But to get back to XP, um, I think starting in 3rd edition there was a shift, and part of the shift was because, and actually it started kind of in 2nd edition, but because there's no more gold for XP, you have to have other ways to award experience to PCs. And so 2nd edition was really exploring that, and we talked about in the last episode the tables where, thieves actually do still get gold for XP. Other classes, clerics get extra XP for successfully casting a spell that was granted to them from their deity, things like that. So you get XP for playing your class well. And I think part of also what happens in 3rd edition is there's a lot of magic items running around, and they actually built in what the crafting system, right? So you could actually create items, and that's part of what you're using your XP for. And in 4th edition, there's also a sort of sense of you're supposed to have magic items awarded to you for getting through certain portions of the story or of the adventure.
Sure.
And that kind of replaced the XP for gold. Instead of having an XP for gold progression, you now have, in these more modern versions of D&D, you have a magic item advancement rather than a gold
I think
advancement.
that the treasure parcels are a really interesting shift in thinking. I remember that being just really hard for me to grasp and engage with as a GM. I just bounced off that real hard as a whole way of thinking about things. And I mean, again, this should probably be a separate episode to talk about treasure and what it means,
right?
In a lot of senses. But yeah, like I have players who are coming from an older edition mindset, um, anywhere from 1st through 3rd as their, you know, the D&D that's in their hearts, right? And so the idea of having a sidebar conversation with the GM where you tell them what magic item you've gone shopping through the player's handbook and all the other magic item books and decided you like best as your loadout so that they can present that to you on their own time frame. That was really antithetical to the whole flow of game and um, the sense of, well, where's the surprise in that was a big thing for certainly for my wife, and I think for a lot of my players. I really didn't get buy-in on, hey, here's the thing I want, from more than about one of my players, who in a move that became sort of legendary within our tight gaming circle, let the NPCs know what magic item he wanted. They agreed to it. He received it as payment in advance, with the understanding that he and the rest of the party would go on the quest, and then in the next session, the player had to move to Canada. And so that was the storyline for the rest of the campaign, them completing this quest for a player who'd received the magic item and left.
Yeah, it's antithetical to me as well, just as a person who started out playing the older editions. I quickly got used to it though, because I decided very early on 4th edition is a different kind of game.
I mean, it certainly is.
Yeah. So I in other words, I set aside my preconceived ideas of what I want the game to be, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to play this game. It might not be the game that I thought that the original editions were, and it's obviously not. But I think that they try to so one of the best books that was produced for 4th edition is the DMG2,
I
the Dungeon Master's Guide 2,
heartily agree. It's an
and I feel
extremely good
like
book.
yeah, and it's good for a lot of reasons, and some of it is applicable to other editions. But one of the things that they do is they talk about alternative rewards.
Mm-hmm.
And so they, instead of, I feel like they did receive, when I say they, I just mean, the designers and Wizards of the Coast and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, the ethereal they, right? They received a lot of feedback about just exactly what we're talking about, where I think it really was not pleasing to a large percentage of the player base or the fan base, so to speak, that magic items were just laid out and the DM was expected to just provide a magic item for their players based on what they wanted, rather than working magic items into the story and making it part of, here's this legendary item. And so they tried to deal with that. They did it with Mordenkainen's Magnificent Emporium. It had these different kits and sets of different magical, artifacts, and they did it a little bit with the Second Adventurer's Vault. They tried to, try to make the magic items showing the players and DMs how you can make a magic item, even though that player knows they're expected to get a certain type of magic item or a certain power level magic item, giving options for, allowing a magic item to grow with the PC rather than have to throw away their 5, magic items they got in the first tier. Now they're, going to the second tier. It seems kind of ridiculous, right? So they tried to start writing about ways to sort of fix that. Fix is kind of a weird word, but ways to ameliorate those effects, though the sort of bad taste that it left in the mouth of some players. And in the DMG2, they have a great section about alternative rewards and how instead of giving a magic item, or you can give divine boons or legendary boons, or you can make the story part of what they're make an item part of the story and how to work that in, and if it's a sentient item and things like that. And it's great. There's great advice in here. The problem is this book came out so late in the 4th edition cycle that it for some people it was a little too late. Although it wasn't that late in the cycle. I mean, it was after the majority of the main rule books had come out, and people had already made their opinions about the magic system and the reward system. And the reason why we're even talking about this in the XP episode is that the way that 4th edition was structured was that XP, because everything was so balanced, XP suddenly didn't have it. It wasn't as consequential as it was before, and because there was this humongous jump in speed of increasing, a speed of leveling, so to speak, that you mentioned before, they had to find different ways to do things. And I think some of those effects were a little bit unintended. I don't mean to imply that the designers didn't know what they were doing, because that's not how I mean it. But in terms of how it would play out over 30 levels, I think there were some unintended consequences of the way that experience points now work in the D&D game that was not maybe foreseen to its fullest extent.
And a lot of the so let's sort of circle this back. Like, in 4th edition adventure creation, there's not a sense that the players have made a choice between an easier encounter and a harder encounter. I think my understanding of uh, original and first ed, and to a very sharply diminishing degree, second and third, is that there was a very clear sense that, especially once you're in the dungeon, the players are choosing whether or not to go to a deeper dungeon level with harder encounters. And so, like you could absolutely be a 3rd level team who's going to the 4th level of a dungeon or the 5th level of a dungeon, knowing that, I mean, you're in nightmare mode, guys. Anything could happen. But if you win that fight,
right,
the XP rewards are going to be awesome for you, whether that's because the gold is awesome or because the monsters are a higher level than you're expected to fight. So it's a disproportionately large XP total or
right.
whatever.
Well, and don't forget that it wasn't always the case. It wasn't the case that you would go down there
Yeah, for
intending
sure.
to fight everything. Instead, you went down intending to sneak around and hoodwink a dumb, unintelligent creature into being able to easily distract it, and then you grab the loot, and then you all meet back up, and then you leave without having to actually put everyone in danger. That's a very different sort of mindset. So yes, the choice is different, because if you're choosing to go down to a deeper level, yes, the challenges are much bigger. The rewards are also concomitantly bigger or larger. But there's also the chance that you might not even fight anything. You just might be able to use your wits and sneak around and, you know, beg, borrow, and steal some loot, and that's going to bring you XP. Whereas that does not exist beyond first edition.
I mean, Warrior Ass falls in a pit that's too deep for you to get out of. I mean, good game.
That's true.
Whatever.
That's true. So right. Well, but that goes for that big risk, big reward thing, right?
Yeah, for sure, exactly. But I think that uh, the big thing here is that the there's a much greater concept of, I guess you'd call it, pathing. Uh, I don't want to say that 4th edition adventures were railroads, because I don't think that's accurate or fair. I think that the idea of player decision making had gone in a different direction, and it was much more an expectation that it was going to be a curated experience on the GM side, right? Um, like you don't see classic Mega Dungeon style design in 4th edition. It's not a thing. Even when there are huge dungeons, they don't operate like classic Mega Dungeons, where you are choosing your level of involvement in Project Mayhem.
To be
Right?
fair, third edition is very similar, right?
Um,
Because
I think that's
the
a fair
player
statement.
choice
I think it's a
the
fair
player
statement.
choice in third edition is rests with the creation of the character, and that leaves the DM to provide challenges to the party, so to speak, that that sort of also match what you just said, that the players all front end their creative endeavors into building these fantastical PCs, and they want to go out and fight everything and meet every challenge. And
I mean, yeah. There's also just the fact that um, the way AC scaling versus attack scaling works for both players and NPCs. Something can just be bracketed outside your reach.
yeah,
Like, it's cool that you want to fight that thing, but I mean, are you going to reliably roll 17s and better to hit
right.
for the whole duration of the
Well,
fight? friend,
that's
you are
true in
not.
4th edition too, right? You're describing 3rd and 4th.
I'm speaking.
Yeah.
I'm speaking of it more
Yeah.
of 4th. I think that in 3rd you much more see attack bonuses get to. No, I'm going to hit the thing. It might be, you know, 5 or 10 CRs above me, but I focused on accuracy. I'm going to hit the thing. I'm not going to do enough damage. I don't have enough hit points to take what it can do to me back. So I'm not going to survive the fight, but it's not because I can't land a hit.
Yeah. And at the very least, even if I can't land a hit, I can roll a nat 20 and hit automatically.
Yeah. Well, I mean that could happen in 4th. It's just not going to be enough.
Yes, of course. I just mean when that wouldn't happen is any of the previous editions before 3rd. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean in the 4th Ed DMG, there are rules on offer for actually just taking XP calculation completely out of consideration. I mean, it is what we now call milestone leveling, and this sort of suggests an etymology for milestone leveling, because milestones have a formal meaning in 4th edition that is slightly askew of this, but
yeah, in 4th edition, milestones are connected to when you get an action point, and
and when you can use magic items.
and when you can regain different types of powers and whatnot. So there's a wider meaning to milestone in 4th edition.
Yeah, for sure. But looking at page 121 in the DMG, if you want to, you can treat experience points the same way you handle action points. Tell the players that they gain a level after they complete 8 to 10 encounters. Don't count really easy encounters. Count really hard encounters as 2, and don't worry about precise XP totals. As with action points, harder and easier encounters balance each other out over the course of that level. So yeah, they're just talking about lifting out the math entirely, other than tally marking 8 to 10 encounters.
Right.
Cool. And that's fine. It's fine. Like it tells you a lot about what they cared about here, and crunching the numbers weren't it.
Well, they cared about crunching the numbers. I think offloading the number crunching onto the players and DM is what they didn't want to do. So that's what the part that they cared about, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and
that's what
I only say that because the system in 4th edition is so very balanced. Now, I'm not saying they succeeded in perfect balance in all cases, but it's so very balanced. They really worked on the math,
right?
Which had this sort of paradoxical effect of, by the time you do get to those epic tier levels that we mentioned earlier, when the math kind of breaks down, it's really, really obvious. In a way that was unintended, I think.
Yeah. I mean, yep. Something went wrong, and solving it with feats did not constitute solving it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that is really the meat of what we need to say about XP in 4th edition. There are quest XP rewards. There are guidelines for how to handle absent players who need to catch up.
There's in the player's handbook as well, not just in the DMG. There's a table on page 259 that talks about rewards and risk assessment and whatnot. And it tells you the frequency that you should get rewards. It tells you that for every encounter, you should get experience points. For every milestone, and remember that has a very specific meaning, you should get an action point. For every few encounters, you should get some treasure. For every quest, which is a sort of overarching sort of mini arc, you should get experience points, treasure, and other rewards. And then after about every 10 encounters, you should get a reward of gaining a new level. Like that's literally, there's a table in the player's handbook that says such things. And then it goes on to explain what it means by those items. And then it actually, at the end of that section, says that there are all, and this is in the PHB 1. It says intangible rewards can also be earned. They include noble titles, medals, honors, favors, and reputation. Such rewards appear most often as quest rewards, as recognition of your work in completing a quest. If you save the Baron's son from kidnappers, the Baron might reward you with a medal or a minor noble title, in addition to granting some monetary reward. And so, and then it goes on. So that's the other part that it's talking about with the quests. And so it's funny because it explicitly spells that out, but it's almost like no one paid any attention to that in 4th edition. Yeah.
Almost, yeah.
So, do you have anything else to say about 4th? You want to move on to 5th?
I think I am pretty well set here without really doing a much deeper dive on rewards, which we've covered rather surprisingly well here. But
yeah, I mean, I think rewards other than like non-XP rewards might deserve its own mini episode or something.
I mean, there's a whole fascinating conversation just around concordance with artifacts as a means of reward, but
right,
that's way off in the weeds from XP.
Yeah.
So,
but there's also something to be said for that sort of reward becoming a driver in the game other than XP, right? I mean, that's actually where it kind of opens back up and loops back around to the previous edition ethos,
right? And
where
I love
the whole idea is exploration, right?
And I love not having players thinking about, hey, we'll get experience points for this. I've always found that really to be a distasteful motivation at the front of the players' minds. As a sort of distant secondary or tertiary, sure, my character will also advance, make progress in level for this. That's great, no problem. But I don't ever want a player's first thought to be, we should jump these guys because we'll get XP for it. That just makes me skeet blood from my eyes. It is not. It's so strictly out of character thinking because there's no in-play language around experience points. If one were to create a game with in-play language around experience points, I dearly hope that one would detach them from your successful campaign of murder across the Sword Coast, or at least not tell me about it.
Right.
But yeah, there are those intangible rewards that that can really be the big drivers of play and the drivers of engagement in the ways that you really want, both things like lands and titles, and then also if your players approach the game in a way where this is suitable, qualifying for Paragon Paths and Epic Destinies as they close in on needing to qualify for them, right? There are a lot of Paragon Paths and Epic Destinies that feel like they are saying you have already accomplished something just to get here, but there's no explicit requirement attached because they don't want to have to even frame terminology about what that requirement would be. But if it's appropriate for your table, then sure, you can say, okay, to qualify for this thing, we're talking about this 3 levels before you need it, but to qualify for this thing, you need to achieve this grand thing. Maybe it's you need to find your paladin mount in order to be the right kind of paladin that you want to be, or whatever. Who cares? I've always loved that level of rewarding someone with advanced permission. The principle behind what prestige classes were supposed to be, what prestige was supposed to mean in that phrase, that didn't really pay off. that was what really spoke to me, right? When I first cracked open my
Right.
third ed DMG, and it spoke, I think, to a lot of people, and then there wasn't a well understood way to make that mean something. And experience points were part of it, because experience points felt inexorable, right? If you engage with the game, you're going to get them. There's no way to not get them, but you also don't want to get to a point where you can't accept your next level because you haven't qualified for the thing yet, and you don't want to have to wait another whole level to start buying the thing, because you didn't want your 7th level to be in rogue anyway, or whatever, for prestige classes. But yeah, it's always been one of the little pain points around experience points and what they mean. So that, I think, brings me to the last thing I wanted to say about 4th edition and apparently 3rd edition experience points. So right. In 5th edition, we're back to 20 levels, this time with a substantially harder. No, 20th level is pretty close to the end of experience advancement, unless you get into divine boon advancement, which is a whole fascinating thing that I think we'll try to touch on a little later. But it's much more 3rd ed in presentation. A lot of 5th ed is much more 3rd ed in presentation, even if the deeper you dig into it, the less it really feels like 3rd, and the more it feels like an intersection of some things about 2nd and some things about 4th. And I think that the fact that all of this is true is a big part of its popularity.
The similarities, or
the similarities that 5th edition manages to have to 2nd and 3rd and 4th, I think, is why it has succeeded in drawing people from those editions, while also winning new players on its own merits.
I think I can agree with that. I think there's an awful lot of second edition in 5th edition, and there's an awful lot of 3rd edition in 5th edition, and there's a little bit of 4th edition in 5th edition. And what's from 4th edition that's in 5th edition are the parts that mesh with the idea of 5th edition the best. So it's not like they just took pieces because they wanted to say they took pieces from every edition. They actually took the pieces that fit their vision of what the game should be now.
Right. I mean, there's no question that the design was carried at 4th with intent and understanding. I mean, yes, okay, I can find people on Twitter who will argue that, but we're not going to agree on a lot of things. Why start there?
Right.
So maybe paradoxically, XP becomes this big function of encounter building, and it gets real mathy in a real hurry if you care about balancing around easy, medium, or hard or deadly difficulty. And encounter building in 3rd was involved in some of the same ways, but wasn't driven by XP totals, because it couldn't be. It was driven by how CR converted to encounter level. So in this, because XP totals are static for a given creature, you're able to take the creature's XP total and add it up until you get to the XP total that is appropriate for the level of difficulty you want for the level of character that you have, right? So, for example, a deadly encounter for a 7th level party has an XP threshold of 1700. And then you also have the Adventuring Day XP, which is talking about the number of encounters that the average party can manage, assuming they get a certain number of short rests along the way, and sort of this whole thing. So it's one of the more in-your-face mathy chapters in all of the DMG, from pages 82 through 84.
And it's not perfect.
and it's not perfect. And the game does work really well, even without referencing these pages once. And a fair amount of published content doesn't adhere to these at all. There are portions of it's no secret that Tyranny of Dragons doesn't adhere to this because it was written at the same time. It couldn't adhere to text that wasn't written yet. But Lost Minds of Phandelver has some hilariously past deadly encounters.
And it's fair to note also that they provided additional experience point and encounter building information in Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
Sure. Yeah.
Several pages. Let's see, it's from page 88, let's say, to 91. And it offers a sort of more mathy way to deal with things. And then at the end, it has this quick matchup table, and it says the guidelines above assume that you are concerned about balance in your combat encounters and that you have enough time to prepare them. If you don't have time, or if you want a simpler and less precise guideline, the quick matchup table below offers an alternative. And you can just look up what level the characters are and look at what an appropriate CR is if you have 1 monster, 2 monster, or 4 monsters, for example, meeting those. So the reason I bring this up is because, and then there's some other tables in here as well, and it talks about encounter building. But the reason I bring this up is that, yes, on one hand, that's an extremely mathy way to do it if you do it the way, and I have run through, I've done various different iterations of encounter building and trying to figure out if I want balance, and sometimes it's not even so much that I want balance, but I want to figure out, okay, how challenging is this going to be for the characters,
Sure.
right, for the players. And those numbers aren't perfect, and they don't always work because it changes based on what kind of classes the party is made up of, and what the skill level of the actual players are versus the level of the PCs and whatnot. But most of the time, well, I don't want to say most of the time, a lot of people won't care about those numbers, and so this quick matchup table is just fine for them. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is, while there is a sort of math-heavy origin to how they laid out the 5th edition monster creation and encounter creation, and how it can be balanced or not balanced, it's also a system that is flexible enough that you don't have to care about that. You can just use like a quick matchup and provide a challenging encounter for the party.
Yep, I agree with that. And I think that as adventure writing has progressed, you've seen WotC's writers be willing to get a lot further outside the box on what constitutes appropriate encounters and ways to just telegraph, you should maybe not fight this thing.
Right.
Just no. Dragon Heist is very much driven by conflict with people who are not motivated to kill the characters, and the characters probably just shouldn't be able to kill. I mean, if you turn these things into a fight, well, you're 5th level, that's CR 15. Bye.
Right. Right.
And then that continues in a different way in Mad Mage, as there's a character who is acting as level gating for the dungeon to stop you from getting into trouble that you need to not get into, which is sort of mind-boggling from an earlier edition dungeon perspective, but I do understand more or less why it's here.
Well, I think so. Can we talk about that for a second? Because I think in terms of XP and whatnot, I think part of the challenge of playing the older edition games, as we just mentioned a few minutes ago, was trying to make the decision about, well, how many resources do we have left? Do we really want to go down these stairs to the next level? Because if we do that, we're going into a realm that is much more dangerous, and not in a linear way. You know, level 2 is not just twice as dangerous as level 1. Level 3 is not just, you know, one more level dangerous than level 2. It might be a logarithmic scale. So level 2 might be 10 times as dangerous as level 1, and level 3 might be 100 times as dangerous as level 1 was. And so that becomes a very important decision point for the entire party. And that decision point was a large part of the game, of managing your resources and managing how much more you can take and what challenges do you think you can overcome, and making the decision appropriate to what the whole group thinks. But in the more modern iterations of the game, 3rd, 4th, 5th edition, that's not really a consideration. You know, the consideration is, for the most part, the system expects that the challenges presented to the party will match their ability to overcome them. And that may not be 100% true, and I know that a bunch of people are probably screaming at their phones right now, hearing me say this, saying, I don't run my game that way, you know, but that is an expectation that has been in the rules since 3rd edition, maybe even since 2nd edition a little bit. And the reason I can say that is that we were just looking at a part of the book that tells you about encounter balance and how many, you know, like the idea is you can do that. And 5th edition has shifted back a little bit from that. It's shifted more away from for the 4th edition ethos, which was, yes, everything is extremely balanced and the party should be meeting things that are challenging but not necessarily deadly on the regular. 5th edition says, well, it's up to the GM, and however the DM wants to run the game, that's what you can run. But it's still written into the rules how to figure out what a balanced encounter will be. Sure. So it's still an expectation.
Sure. I think it's totally fair for a GM to just want to know, is this a fair encounter? No? That's fine. Let's do it anyway. Right? And like Descent into Avernus is the one that really goes whole hog on, you're just going to encounter a lot of stuff that, nope. I mean, nope.
Yeah.
Do not fight Bell.
Right.
Don't do it.
Right.
Do not do it.
So
on,
actually, can I say something about that? So,
sure.
You know, the idea of running into a Lord of the Nine Hells in basic D&D or in 1st edition, you would have to already be relatively high level, like very high level, relatively speaking. Sure. And to even think about that. And then if you were actually encountered, you know, Asmodeus or Belial or a string of, you know, a string of demons walking, you know, single file through the cavern, you know, you're not going to face them down and expect to win. If you're facing them down, it's because you need to negotiate and you have something they want or need, and that therefore you have a wedge for that negotiation. In 4th edition, you could face them down, no problem. In 5th edition, I think they're trying to flip back over to the, you know, some things are just too powerful even for really extremely powerful characters. But I'm not sure they've been very they haven't done that all the way, because when you look at an adventure like what is it, Out of the Abyss, at the end they're fighting the demon lords. Well, they're watching the demon lords fight each other, and they can become involved in helping to change that. So that's why I say it shifted a little bit. They're not necessarily facing the demon lord themselves, but they are involved in the conflict.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's no sense that at the end of Out of the Abyss you're going to go heads up against any of the demon lords and just steamroll them. But I mean, that also gets into one of the big learning lessons for any 5th edition GM that I mean, most of us had to learn on our own at some point, which is action economy is king. A group of 4 to 6 characters can take things wildly above their CR if there's just one of them and they don't have a bunch of legendary actions, or frankly, even if they do. Because, I mean, action denial is it's a thing, and once you start down the path of, yes, I can stun that, your legendary status doesn't count for much. From what I've seen and what I've heard from other people. I mean, just having the edge in overall actions per round is a huge deal, even if each individual attack is less damage. Like an overwhelming number of goblins with short bows can be a bad problem for even a very high level party.
Yeah, I think we've also touched on this on other episodes as well. Same idea. The idea of this is one of the major differences between 4th edition and almost all of the other editions, and that is in 4th edition, if you see a horde of goblins, it's a reasonable expectation to think, oh, the majority of those, say some 95%, are probably minions, and I can cleave through those with no problem. And only about 5% of those, 150 combatants are going to be a problem for me. And there's 5 of us, so we can go through and we can survive that battle with no problem. In 5th edition, you might be fighting 2 big brutes and think, oh, okay, we're doing okay on this combat. And then next thing you know, you're looking over your shoulder and there's 5 little pipsqueak goblins behind you. Suddenly you're sweating.
Yeah. That is for sure a thing. And the very flat advancement of PC defenses is just the key there. The reason that wouldn't work that way in 3rd, especially, is that your ACs are going to scale so that you are just about pushing hits off the table on anything other than a 20. Even if that isn't literally happening, it's going to be close enough to happening that it makes no difference. Whereas, hey, a 20 AC in 5th, and you are rocking.
Yeah, you're impervious to a lot of things.
Well, like that's not absolutely as good as you can get, but I mean, you've got somewhere, and it's going to stand you in good stead.
Right.
But a lot of attacks, 6 or 7 short bow attacks per round, if you're not trimming those down pretty quickly, it's going to cause you a bad problem. But I think we're well and truly off the experience point.
We're far off the beaten path here.
The short version then is that 4th edition still supports a mathy approach to experience points, and you killed this many creatures, so you get this much XP, and then you divide it by the number of players, and you advance that way. It also supports, and the published adventures much more energetically support, milestone XP of just when you get to a satisfying point in the story where it feels like they've accomplished a thing and they've had the right amount whatever right amount means for you and your table of action to advance, they advance. Yay! Screw math. It's great. Um, in my own game, we do track experience points because a given character is not super likely to be in the party roster 2 adventures in a row, and so XP totals are just all over the place.
Right.
There are low level characters adventuring with high level characters, and when the high level character earns 3,000 experience points, so does the low level character, and so they catch up PDQ.
Right.
Especially when the player of the high level character for the next session switches over to a lower level character they've been wanting to work on.
Right.
That's very much a thing with us,
Yeah.
and it's all about just we're adults with tough schedules, and people can show up when they can show up.
Right. Right. Which, to be honest, talking about how growing up and having an adult schedule and jobs and children and other responsibilities, the effect that's had on how the game gets designed, I think, is actually a viable topic for an episode.
Yep, it's very real. It's very real. In 5th edition, as in 4th, they've done away with, I think, all ways to lose experience points. It is a hard rule in 4th that there are no ways to lose experience points. Mm-hmm. It says so in the player's handbook. This is a number that can never go down. Yeah. It never resets to 0. It only goes up. In 5th edition, I only can't think of anything, with the exception of the Deck of Many Things, that would ever cause you to lose XP. But maybe you can think of something I'm forgetting.
I can't think of anything other than that, what you just said, so, some certain magic items. But the thing is that particular magic item, allowing for that mechanic to exist in the game, also means that anyone can house rule a particular magical artifact that is cursed or whatever, and allows that.
But for sure, it definitely could be a thing. I don't think any of us are knocking down WotC's door to
I mean,
release it in official content.
I think that XP is still a reward. It is still here's what you get for doing a good job. It's your gold star at the end of a session. You know what I mean? And I think that,
yeah, for sure,
I think they figured out taking that away is not in the best interest of fun.
Right. And in my campaign, where we do track the math of experience points, the number of experience points the players get is a total pull from my hindquarters at the end of the session. I come up with a number that sounds like it'll be satisfying.
Yeah.
Based on the engagement the players showed in either picking something dangerous or picking something that was really meaty and story forward.
Mm-hmm.
I have sometimes gone back and said, yeah, okay, I am not valuing the non-combat sessions enough within the XP totals. I need to increase that, or I'm saying that non-combat isn't as valuable as combat. Well,
right.
Fair. But I mean, when the players have a list of options and there's one that has a big red warning sign on it saying, this is crazy dangerous, and they go for it anyway, then yeah, they're going to get some more XP.
Right.
No problem. Right. It's cool if they all survive it, but it's not important to me if they all survive it. They all have ults. It's fine. They can go play someone else next time. But I don't have the energy or the motivation at the end of a session to total up anything about what they've done and divide by the number of players present and come up with a number to tell them. That just is not interesting to me.
You mean you don't want to do the Gygaxian XPEB, XPVA, all that stuff.
Oh, God of mercies. No, I do not care for that, Sam. I am.
I mean, so I feel like there was a place for that at the time. I feel like, and in the last episode we kind of gave Gygax a hard time. But I think that the thing is that this was the time when those things were being written, and when that was being developed. There was nothing else. There was no guidepost. There was no plethora of other RPGs and other designers to talk to and to discuss things with and to play test with 100,000 people and figure out what actually works and is fun and what just sounds great but doesn't actually work at the table. I mean, and what's actually a reasonable thing to expect a DM to do, in between while session prepping, and what's not really a reasonable, or maybe reasonable is the wrong word, maybe just fun is the right
Yeah.
word, right? And I feel like, I give him a hard time, but I do it with respect as well, because I think, we kind of shake our heads and we go, oh man, the calculation here, but he was trying to codify something that did not previously exist.
For sure.
And for that, I think he did a good job. And I think the evolution of the game through all of these editions that we've been talking about shows what a great foundation that made for designers to figure out and for DMs to figure out, okay, how do I run this game and make it really fun?
Right. I do think that there are a lot of things that had to be tried because that was the only way to find out if they were going to work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of the new things that have become more public in just the past couple of months about uh, Dave Arneson's style and the Brunstein style um, have helped to cast some of that in a different light for me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it really suggests that the more antagonistic GMing style was not even universal at the time of publication. It was
Mm-hmm.
pretty specifically Gary's thing, and there were other people working in the same space but taking a very different tack, even from the very beginning. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also think in part, um, a little bit of that is where the old adage of, this game is imagination, so you run your game how you want, and these rules are guidelines and suggestions, and you run the game the way you want. I think part of that is a nod to the fact that there doesn't have to be one right way. As much as Gary blustered about this is the way to play this game,
Yeah,
he himself also contradicted his own words multiple times
sure.
throughout the years, and throughout whatever. But I feel like the blustering was just a personality quirk, and he knew that people were playing the game differently as well.
I think that's fair. That's fair. Well,
So what else do you want to say about 5th edition and XP?
um, hmm, uh, I think that there are still people experimenting with uh, using 5th edition rules, but circling back to uh, gold for experience points. I've seen drafts of rules along those lines, uh, but
Mm-hmm.
that uh, I think that overall the number crunching approach to experience points is um, fading in popularity within the community because the published adventures are steering them away from it. Um, it's been, I think, quite correctly pointed out that Dungeon of the Mad Mage really does want a more numerical XP total approach to experience because it's such an open area for you to explore in whatever order you want. that milestones don't really work very well. You just get to, well, we finished this level sort of, but we only encountered about half the things here, or well, we methodically encountered all the things here and then circled back and did another bunch of things over there. And anyway, it's been 15 sessions since we leveled, but that's not because we're faffing around. It's just this dungeon is enormous, and our DM also wanted to tack on some additional side content in the way the module says to. So right. Favoring milestone experience for Mad Mage was an odd choice. But I did want to take just a quick moment to mention that 5th edition has its own little postgraduate program for advancement after 20th level. You got your divine boons in the DMG. Starting on page 231, you get a page and a quarter describing that additional advancement past 20th level. So it says, consider awarding one epic boon to each character every 30,000 XP they earn above 355,000 experience points. These are individual features. They aren't exactly on par with what you'd give a nominal 21st level in a class. And importantly, they aren't more experience, more hit points, and more proficiency bonus, and so on.
Right, but also note that on page 230, down at the bottom, there's a sidebar that says you can also decide, rather than giving an epic boon, you can provide an ability score improvement or a new feat.
Yep.
Right. So it actually, yeah, you're right. It provides guidance, a little bit of guidance for here's how you can keep going if those characters still want to do things.
Yeah. As you say, we've seen very, very little support for even 20th level play in 5th from official channels, to say nothing of post 20th play.
Yeah, and I get flashbacks of epic tier 4th edition from that, because the same thing happened. But the scuttlebutt was they were going to come out with a DMG 3, and it was because the first DMG 1 was for heroic tier. DMG 2 had a section on Paragon tier games, and everybody was sort of holding their breath waiting for the epic tier book, and it never showed up because of course they went in a different direction.
Yeah.
But I remember that for a very long time, at least what seemed like a long time, while we were all, the people were all in the midst of playing 4th edition, and we were all waiting. Our characters got to 20th and 22nd level, and we're waiting for, okay, this isn't quite working out. We need our book to tell us how to make this game work in the epic tier, and we never got it. And I kind of feel like that's a little bit what's happening here in 5th edition too, where the support for the top 4 levels is just not there.
Yep.
What I wanted to mention though before we move on is note that epic boon section is directly after the other rewards section, which starts on page 227, which talks about blessings and charms and supernatural gifts and marks of prestige and parcels of lands and medals and special favors and strongholds and nobilities, and that very same thing that it talked about in 4th edition.
Yep.
Is right here in this book.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, there's it's very good content that I think I would really like to I'd like to see more people explore and talk about. We are starting to see a bit more of it showing up in official adventures. Dragon Heist is obviously one of the most significant and known examples, but Ghost of Saltmarsh also plays in that space a bit, and I love it. I'm crazy about it. Just it's such a good way to give players something that they care about for more than what it can do for them.
Right. I feel like we have now gone through the evolution of multiple editions of the game for us to realize that experience points are a straitjacket in a certain manner of point of view, right? In a certain point of view.
Right.
Because, so they do serve their purpose. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we should throw out the baby with the bathwater. But, as you said, using milestone XP works in a great number of cases. And it removes the straitjacket from that story-based gaming. And you can now explore different aspects of that story without worrying about, did we defeat enough creatures to get to the next level so that we could move to the next stage of the story.
Right.
But it doesn't work in every case because Dungeon of the Mad Mage, as you pointed out, does not work with milestones. And choosing to discuss that particular adventure as if milestones were the way to go is kind of the wrong. It feels wrong. It feels like it wasn't as effective and efficient as it could have been.
And I believe I owe a hat tip to Merrick Blackman for that particular point.
Yeah. Oh God, I owe about 1,000 hat tips to Merrick.
Right.
He's good.
Sharp fella.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like from a point of view, XP is a straitjacket. Not from every point of view, but from a certain point of view. And because of that, I think really in 5th edition more than any other edition, the designers have explored other ways to write a story to allow the DM and the players to experience progression that's not so strongly tied to, if I get one more XP, I'm going to level up.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think it's a progressive evolution rather than a regressive evolution. But as I said, I don't want to throw XP totally out the window. I think XP has its place, and not just as a stalwart of the history of the game, but as it's still a good way to run a certain type of D&D game.
Well, and there have been some other really compelling experiments with form over the years. I feel like I should point out that my very favorite of all of my players, the one I'm married to, would very cheerfully run a game or play in a game that completely removed level-based advancement as just an element of play.
Right.
It just does not offer her anything of interest, and she would want to see advancement come in the form of things your character has earned, not like things you can talk about in the story as having been earned, whether it's a magic weapon or a new spell or a new manner or whatever. But really putting a laser focus on story and how it engages with the idea of reward. Another really interesting experimentation with form was the Epic 6 or Epic 8 format in 3rd edition, where advancement proceeded from 1st level, but once you got to 6th level or 8th level, that was the level cap. You could still earn XP, but you shifted into alternative advancement in a manner not too dissimilar to epic boons.
Okay.
You could buy things like improved ability scores and additional feats and so on, but if you're playing E6, well, you were never getting a 4th level spell. That wasn't a thing. Or if it was a thing, it was a thing in this really roundabout, like ritual performing way, not, I just normally have access to 4th level slots, right?
Right.
And it's a fascinating format because of how it keeps world building much, much lower fantasy. And some really interesting things happen because of the choice of 6 or 8 as your level cutoff, because of how each new level of spells drastically changes the setting and the fiction.
Right.
So yeah.
So let me ask you a question then about your wife. Does she play non-level based RPGs as well, or does she just play D&D?
We do play non-level based RPGs like Over the Edge.
Okay.
I mean, Over the Edge is one of her favorite games of all
Nice.
time. Any edition of the game.
Yeah. Do you have the latest
Oh
edition?
boy! Oh yeah!
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, she has one of her old Over the Edge characters in the book itself because she backed at that level in the Kickstarter.
Nice.
But we're good friends with some of the creators and have really loved following the game to its new release, and we're so happy to see a new edition come out. We're huge fans.
Yeah.
She's run sessions of Over the Edge for Atlas Games at Gen Con, that kind of thing.
Oh, nice.
So
okay.
she is a mega fan, and I would say that I am too of Over the Edge. We've also played character point advancement games like World of Darkness, which have the same problem for her of just it isn't great to feel like, well, I haven't played the game long enough to play the character concept I wanted when I was coming into the game. Zero to Hero is just not an arc that is super fun for her.
Right.
And I can understand that. Certainly, it's an arc that we've kind of done to death. Seeing some official adventures try out more. I start off as somebody, and let's really dig into who that somebody is, and then go from there. Could really be a breath of fresh air and a different way of doing things.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have to be you start at 10th or 15th, even starting at 5th as you see in Mad Mage, but really weaving that character into society could be really cool.
Right.
And you look at Storm King's Thunder, I believe, was noted for kind of really rushing you through the first 5 levels so that you were tough enough to start taking on the things that you were there to fight in Storm King's Thunder. So
right. One of the things I like about Numenera, we're way off base now, but talking about Over the Edge and Numenera and whatever. But one of the things I really liked about Numenera, I happened to run a game of Numenera, a campaign level game. It's 8 session arc or something like that. And one of the players really liked to play nobles, and he wanted a character that was a noble, and that is so easy to do in Numenera, and you can make that character a tier 1 character. So they're basically level 1, starting out at the same power level as everyone else in terms of the PC, but the system allows for that sort of background to actually have oomph in the setting. And it worked beautifully. I was a little worried at first because I was, thinking, oh crap, this person, I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to rein in the power of this person if they're part of a noble house and this and that. But it was just very smooth and easy, and it worked just beautifully in a way that felt natural within the game mechanics and the game setting. And I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not saying that can't happen in D&D. By all means, it has happened in D&D for me. In previous editions, I haven't done anything like that in 5th, but it's almost it's a sort of a different kind of game when you're doing that in D&D all of a sudden, and you usually have to be a much higher level before you can get to the point where you're doing that. Whereas in that Numenera game I ran, it was like from day one, it was completely okay and within the bounds of the game that this person could be the son of the king.
And it was really exciting for me when I was going through D&D Next and 5th Ed and seeing backgrounds, and Noble's right there, and they don't drill down into all that should mean in the societies they're nominally presenting, but I mean, in principle, playing a member of the high nobility or the royal or imperial families should be on the table with that.
Right.
It's not rejected. In theory, Noble can support that. In practice, that's a big expansion to the background feature, but that's okay. Whatever. You do you.
Yeah. Anyway, now that I've gotten us way off on a totally different tangent, last thoughts about 5th edition and XP?
I think we've said it. I think I am pretty comfortable with the ground we've covered here.
Awesome. I think I am too.
Right on.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, and we hope that you enjoyed our conversation, including all of our amazing tangents. And we hope to hear feedback from you, and we hope that you're enjoying it enough to listen next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.